What's up, everybody? Rob Swanson back here with another Real Estate Mogul Show. Hey, we've got the crew pared down a little bit here in the studio today. It is myself, Mike, and Joe back there around the wall pushing the buttons. I can't see him again. We are back off of Zoom. Everybody's back here in the office, and we are going to crank into this thing today. Hey, listen, if you have ridden the wave of text message marketing for lead generation in your real estate investing business over the last few years, that wave is gone. It's gone, baby. It's just gone. And we're going to talk about why it's gone, and we're going to talk about how we got there. We're going to talk about all the pitfalls, the turns, the twists. This is like daytime drama that we're about to get into. But it's going to be all about real estate investing and making money and building your best life. Isn't that right, Mike?
That's right. And it was a wave.
Man, it was. Look, I remember back in 2013, I published a course with Joe McCall, and it was called Leads in an Hour. Yep. And what it did is, back then, it was not taking, well, here's what it did. It took publicly available phone numbers that you could go find. We taught people to hire a virtual assistant, go online, find phone numbers that had been publicly advertised and made available for out there publicly, build a list of those phone numbers, and they're, for rent addresses, for sale addresses, all sorts of different types of things that we taught people to go and build this list. Yep. And then we taught, this is 2013, we taught people to send a text message. Hey, you wouldn't be interested in selling your house, would you? Well, that was right about the time that the TCPA law, back in 2013, in October 2013, when the TCPA law was updated to include texting. And it was the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. And so it applied the same level of control, if you will, over texting that calling had been placed under for a number of years. And so there were rules and regulations around what you could do and what you can't do and that kind of thing. And so when we first came out with this course, and we taught people how to do this, we sold thousands of this, and it kind of started the wave of text message marketing. Like, it was the big event that all of a sudden got everybody on board. And back then it was fully legal. It was, you could do it the way we taught it was legal, the way we taught it was compliant with the TCPA. I actually hired an attorney to write an opinion letter on our course so I could stick it in the file. So it's 2023 right now. Yep. So for a decade, for 10 years, I have been entrenched, ingrained, and living in this world of text message marketing. Right. It's been a crazy ride.
Right.
Here's the thing. My involvement in it got even deeper when I bought FreedomSoft 8 some years ago now. And when I bought FreedomSoft, it didn't initially have a phone system built into it. So we subsequently built, it was one of the first big things I did in FreedomSoft when I acquired it, we built the phone system into FreedomSoft. So it had full inbound, outbound calling, voicemail, call recording, call schedules, call routing, text message, inbound, outbound, all this stuff, right? And so I got even more ingrained in what's going on in the world of real estate investor lead generation using a phone system when we went there. And you subsequently, as a platform owner, you start to learn all of the little nuances that none of your users care about, right? Like having the ability to import and export and auto update your do not call lists, and managing a do not call list internal to managing a do not call list published by the federal and state governments, and all of these things that you as a platform have to take into account, figure out, and follow the law and or give your users the bumpers from which to bounce around inside, right?
Yep.
And so it's been an interesting journey, and I know, Mike, you've been entrenched in it in the last, I'm going to say last year for sure, like deep in it for the last year. The last 60 days have been heavy, and we're going to get into it and we're going to talk about it because I want people to understand a couple of things out of this conversation here with us today. I want people to understand a little bit about the history and how we got here. I want people to understand what some of the arguments for and against text message marketing as lead generation are and kind of why they exist. Where we believe the law is extremely black and white, very clear about where things land, and what do you do? What do you do instead? Like, where do real estate investors go? Now what?
Right. Yeah.
Because that is the thing that everybody's asking. What do I do now?
Right.
This gravy train easy, build a list, skip trace it, blast out text messages. I'm telling you, I've been doing this for a long time, over 20 years. That was the easiest season of lead generation I've ever existed in the real estate investing world during.
And fastest.
It was cheap. It was easy, cheap, and fast.
Right.
And so many people over the last decade have come into the world of real estate investing, and that was their ace in the hole. It was the thing they knew how to do, and they knew they could generate an inbound lead and a conversation with somebody that was interested in selling their house for pennies on the dollar.
Right. In 5 to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And let's start here, because there are multiple people that are listening to this podcast that have never heard of the Trace Act or A to P 10 DLC.
Yep.
And they're maybe driving in their car and they just swerved off the road thinking, what?
Yeah.
Text isn't allowed anymore?
Right.
And I know this to be a fact because I still talk to these people. Not quite weekly anymore.
Yeah.
But it's newsflash. Wait a minute. This is no longer allowed.
Yep.
And so, no, it's not. But it's not just like we ended up here. And that's what we're going to unpack a little bit is kind of the timeline of it.
Yeah.
And how it unfolded and how it's been clumsy was the word I used the other day.
Yeah.
With somebody, and I think that's fairly accurate. It rolled out. I don't know if I want to say fast. I think it was fast for the level of change that took place, because I mean, how many hundreds of millions and billions of text messages? I don't even know the number. Get sent on a daily basis, right? It is this massive channel of communication, obviously, and so for the carriers and the regulation to kind of figure out what are we going to control, what are we going to police, how are we going to do it. That's been, and we've felt it firsthand because we kept building and implementing technology in FreedomSoft to help. And I lost track of how many times our normal development schedule got derailed.
Right.
For phone-based changes.
Massive.
Because it's,
Massive.
It's been, and it continues.
Yeah.
We just wrapped up another push, and there's another deadline coming in a couple weeks.
Yep.
That we'll get to. So it still hasn't gone away.
Well, here's it hasn't gone away for sure, and I can tell you, based on the amount of money that I've made the personal decision to invest to improve, fix, make sure it works and is compliant, a phone system inside of FreedomSoft, I can tell people personally the amount of money invested. And it's massive. Yeah. It's massive. And here's the thing. I want to take a little sidebar for just a moment because, there's somebody sitting here listening and they're hearing about text messaging and they're saying, how does this relate to me? Well, as a real estate investor, and this is an important thing to know, you have to generate leads of interested sellers, people that are interested sellers, right? Everybody will tell you that you have to find motivated sellers. There's some truth to that, but what you need before a motivated seller is an interested seller. You need somebody that is interested or wants to sell their house. And so if you're hearing this conversation and saying, man, I don't really even understand what they're talking about. Well, as a real estate investor, you need to generate leads. And one of the things we're talking about here is one of the tactics for generating leads. One of the ways real estate investors over the last decade have generated interested seller and motivated seller leads is using text message marketing. Now, the reason they did that is because they had a goal and they had an objective. They wanted to generate cash, create cash flow. They wanted to invest in real estate. And the way you invest in real estate is you buy real estate. And the only way you buy real estate is you have to connect with an interested seller, somebody that is interested in selling their real estate. And so here's what I want to say.
Yep.
If you're sitting here listening to this and you are saying, I don't have a strategy for why I would even care about generating a lead, but you want to learn what real estate investing is all about, what I want you to do is go to freedomsoft.com/join faster mogul. freedomsoft.com/join faster mogul. We've got a 5-day mini course that will walk you through how to become a real estate investor. It'll take you through our statement of beliefs. It'll take you through our freedom formula. It will take you through marketing strategies and tactics and how to analyze a real estate deal. It's a 5-day course. It's absolutely free. All you've got to do is go over there and jump through it. freedomsoft.com/join faster mogul. All right.
I was just going to say, and we're talking about off-market buckets because somebody just heard what you just said and said, well, wait a minute. If somebody wants to sell their house, isn't it just listed? And the answer to that oftentimes is no.
Right.
The property needs work. They think that a traditional real estate agent wouldn't list it. They would say, hey, in the condition this is in, nobody would buy it. Nobody can live in this house.
Yep.
Or for a lot of different reasons. The other thing that I've found too is that a lot of times, so real estate tends to be emotional. Not even tends to. Real estate a lot of times is emotional. Sometimes people acquire a house through, parents passed away, family members passed away, and you get the house. There's strong emotion tied to that house. Sometimes people buy a property with the intent of maybe doing a fix and flip or renting it out, and something goes sideways and they lose a ton of money. There's emotion in that. And what happens a lot of times is when there's pain tied to something, a really common human reaction to that is I just don't want to think about it. And so that's what people do. And they say, that's too painful to think about. I'm going to stuff it over in this closet and I'm just going to go about my life. And then your marketing shows up. And so I just wanted to, bring up this point that not everybody who has a house that they want to or would be interested in selling has it listed. And so over the last decade, minus the last couple years, texting has been one of the primary, if not the primary, marketing method to try and identify these people.
Yep.
And because I just wanted to speak to that there's an on-market listed bucket of properties for sale.
Yep.
And then there's this massive off-market, not currently listed bucket of interested and or motivated sellers.
Yeah, that's a good distinction.
And text was the method.
Yep.
So this
it was the method for a lot of people.
Right.
I can say unequivocally that the number one real estate strategy that I have ever employed to take an off-market deal and turn it into an opportunity is direct mail.
Direct mail, for sure.
It's the one thing that has been consistent for over 20 years. And when you get really good at it, your costs come down. We did a show a while back and we talked about we talked about cost per lead, we talked about cost per deal or cost per contract, and then cost per closing. So what does it cost you to get a lead? What does it cost you to get a contract? What does it cost you to get across the closing line?
Yep.
And, a lot of people hear direct mail and they avoid direct mail because they think it's expensive. Well, it's expensive if you don't do it right. It's actually pretty inexpensive and high conversion results when you do it right.
And I'll tell you what, too, this is something that's interesting, I think, to note, is FreedomSoft sort of flipped it on its head. You guys did a great job at reimagining direct mail with the sequencing and the immediacy of being able to pull the trigger on one piece of direct mail and not have to go to a mail house and do a 250 minimum. you know, people would get hung up on that too, I think, in the past, where, man, I don't want to spend the money on 250, 500, 1,000 cards,
Right.
but I have these 70 people I want to pull the trigger on, and I know that they're interested based on the way I built my list that you guys taught, and here we go. FreedomSoft has given a new opportunity for people that want to dive into that.
Well, I think that's important, and you know we're gonna jump back to the texting conversation here in a minute, because I don't want people to hear that texting in FreedomSoft is dead either. We've gone through the massive hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of investment in technology and team to make sure that our users can text successfully inside of FreedomSoft. Mm-hmm. So number one, I want people to hear that as we continue this conversation, and number two, you hit the nail on the head, Joe, because not everybody that starts, you know, as a real estate investor or getting into it is going to go and send 5,000 or 10,000 or 25,000 postcards. Somebody is going to drive down the street, see a house, log into FreedomSoft, pull it up in our smart search, look at it, and say, yes, based on the motivation icons and the AI that we display on a lead record inside of FreedomSoft, they say that has, number one, it meets the criteria that I'm looking for. Number two, it suggests that there would be potential motivation or interest by the seller to sell, and I would like to buy it. They click the send mail button, and with a click, you can send one piece of mail out of FreedomSoft. And so we have taken this concept that text messaging created, and that is, I need to do sometimes lower volume at lower price as fast as I can on a very targeted list. And we said, okay, that's not the way direct mail has historically been done.
Right.
But how do we take what we learned and what we saw the industry do with text, and how do we apply that to direct mail? How do we give speed, efficient, inexpensive direct mail tools to our users? So that's where we've landed, where people can now get in and use direct mail in a massively new and different way than what is historically or readily available out there outside of the FreedomSoft system. Mm-hmm. Now, here's what I want to do. Let's take this jump back to texting and lay this framework, because I want people to understand a little bit about how we landed on solving the problem of texting. And, you know, Mike, you've been in the trenches on this thing, not only sitting in on our development and engineering meetings, but also in the meetings with the carriers and the platforms and the behind the scenes folks that are in charge, all the way to frontline with our users and communicating regularly. Talk to me a little bit about what you've seen, and let's just take this timeline from. Here's what we know. The whole issue is A to P 10 DLC. Somebody's seen that in a blog. Somebody's read that in a Facebook post. Somebody's seen it on TikTok. A to P 10 DLC.
Yep.
Okay, here's what it is. The rules, if I'm sending a message with my cell phone to a cell phone, there are no rules.
Correct. And I like to talk about it consumer to consumer. They call it A to P. So let me say this is the capital letter A.
Let's say what A is.
The number 2 and a capital letter P.
Yeah.
And it stands for application to person.
Yep.
The way, and tell me if this fits here. The way I've explained this to people is B to C. Because I think that's the way the world thinks about it. When a business wants to send a text message to a consumer.
Yep.
Right? Even though they call it A to P.
Yep. Yes. Correct. A to P application. So here's what it is.
Yeah.
If I have my hard case cell phone in my hand, this is not an application. This is hardware, and the carriers treat a text message that comes from this hardware differently than they treat a text message that comes from a computer system.
Correct.
So it doesn't matter what computer system it is. It doesn't matter if it's FreedomSoft. It doesn't matter if it's fill in the blank on the 1,000 other online phone systems in order to do A2P, application, a software system. And I don't even care if that software system is a mobile app, okay? A mobile app, native iPhone, native Android, desktop, Chrome, Firefox, you name it. It doesn't matter.
All application.
Yep.
Application to a person, you have to go through this process of registration.
Yep.
Now, as a relatively hardcore libertarian, leave me alone. I can't say that I love it. Like, here's what I can say. I can see why it exists, because the ease of spammers and scammers to just get phone numbers and blast texts and take advantage of people and just fill up your text, almost make it worse than your email inbox because it's so disruptive. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And I get that something had to...
And that's really the driving force behind.
That's right.
You remember, this was a couple years ago now, 2.5, 3 years ago, but we saw, and we knew this to be true, but we were talking to the phone provider, and the delivery stats, the effectiveness, the read rates on text blow other communications out of the water. It's something, don't quote me on these, but
like 98% opened in 1 minute.
Yeah. And most of them are inside of 15 to 30 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy how effective it is. And so the carriers, from the way it was explained to us, was they wanted to protect the integrity of text messaging.
That's right.
And so it kicked off this, probably initially driven by consumer complaint. Again, that was what was communicated to us.
Yep.
And they said, okay, we have to protect the integrity of this super effective form of communication.
And let me just be clear on that. Just add one thing to that. That's true. However, that would suggest that the carriers have morals and actually care. They don't. They want as many millions and billions of text messages going through their platform as possible. The reason they care about the integrity of their consumer is because the government said, if you don't care, we'll hammer down. Because the consumer said, this is a bad experience for us. We're kind of sick of this spammy crap, and there's no regulation. So the consumer complained to the government.
Right.
Lawyers got involved, started suing people, and then the carriers said, well, we have to respond.
They said, so now we care.
Now we care.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, that's good to go upstream. But it was, so to kick it off, it was a consumer, the way I understand it, it was a consumer complaint-based change that spun this whole thing into motion.
Yep. Starting with the Telephone Consumer Protection Act way back when, right? Which started around phone calls and voicemails. A phone call even to a landline. And it regulated what's called an ATDS, an automated telephone dialing system, an ATDS.
Yep.
And so when texting first got on the scenes, there was two arguments that real estate platforms kind of hung their hat on to say why you could build a list, skip trace the list, and blast out 1,000 text messages, or 10,000 text messages, or 100,000 text messages, right? There was two arguments. Number one, that the intent of the call was not commercial in nature. It was not. We were not texting somebody to sell them something. Okay, that was the first argument. So the argument was, it's okay to build this list, skip trace the list, and send a text message because we're not of commercial intent. We're not trying to sell anything. We're actually trying to buy something from someone.
Trying to buy.
Okay?
That's right.
So that was their first legal argument. Now, I think that legal argument is probably a fairly decent legal argument. I haven't tested it in the court of law. There's been, depending on the district court where it's been challenged, there's been some gray. There's been some, yep, we agree. There's been some, no, we don't agree. in the, I think it's the 11th District Court. I think 11th is California. They never agree. California always just hammers down. And then you can go to some of the other district courts and they'll be like, yeah, we see the validity of that. And so there's not clarity around how that's interpreted. But that was interpretation number one. The second thing that real estate industry hung its hat on was that the technology was built so that it was not an ATDS. It was not an automated telephone dialing system. What it required was human interaction to send every text message. Okay? So, FreedomSoft was built this way. Okay? FreedomSoft, we never hung our hat and said the premise of building lists, skip tracing it, and blasting out text. We never hung our hat on the premise that it was not commercial intent. We didn't come out and teach that or pitch that or preach that. We let our users make that determination, how they wanted to run their business. That's the libertarian side of me, right? And it's a hard thing sometimes to be, leave me alone as a platform owner, with the beliefs of leave me alone, and then me having to make the decision, we got to put constraints on. Like that is a mental gymnastics thing that I go through on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Right. And so we had these two things. We're compliant because we're not commercial intent and we're not an ATDS. It takes human interaction and every text requires a click. You have to click to send out every text. There's no automated texting system.
Yep.
Okay. So that was where the industry landed. Now, the way the law worked is it mattered whether you were making phone calls to landlines or cell phones or text messages to cell phones only. And then it came down to a couple things. Is the intent of the message marketing related or non-marketing? And then the requirement of TCPA and then of traced was you had to have express written consent. So to send a text message for marketing purposes, and this was the argument why the industry argued that it was compliant, was because, well, this isn't for marketing purposes. This is for we're not selling something commercial intent. We're buying something, and so you had marketing, non-marketing. You had landlines, cell phones, and then you had this auto dial piece to the equation.
Right.
So everybody said we're good, and there were companies that blew up and then flashed out that were just text platforms, and some of them have tried to pivot, add other things, but that's what they were. They saw an opportunity. It was short-lived. It was like the game was really maybe a 5-year game of real.
That's what I remember.
Yeah,
5 years.
It was about 5 years, and
Yep.
then consumers started to complain.
Yep.
And when consumers started to complain, they signed the Trace Act in December of 2019 into law, which now put greater penalties for violating the TCPA. It put a little bit more clarity around what was going to be required, but what it mostly did is it told the carriers, you got to get this under control. You got to figure it out, because if you don't figure it out, we're going to come up with another law, and we're going to figure it out for you. So most big industries, when they hear the government telling them, you figure it out, police yourself, or we're going to do it for you,
Right.
are going to figure out how to police it themselves, because they want to be in control of the policing. They don't want the government to tell them how to do it.
That's right.
Because the government never figures out how to do it right.
Correct.
Ever.
Double correct.
So
Right.
so here's we are.
fascinating.
So December 2019, we entered this world of this swimming pool of nobody knows what's going on. And the texting volume continued through 2019 into 2020 because the carriers had not figured out how to regulate things yet. They had not put blocks in place.
Right.
And so as I'm reliving this, I remember the first big thing carriers started to do was they started to block messages, and they started, which started to affect deliverability. So what they started to do is also they looked at, did somebody just build a list, skip trace? Now, this was not the carrier's language, right? But this is what was happening.
Right.
Did somebody build a list, skip trace a list? Because when you skip trace a list, you get voice over IP phone numbers, you get carrier phone numbers, you get landline phone numbers, you get a whole mix match of phone numbers. And what people were doing is they were building a list, skip tracing a list, getting all of these phone numbers, loading it up, and firing off text messages.
And not what I remember early on is one of the earliest catches that they came up with is the exact same message coming out repeatedly in a short amount of time from the same number to multiple other numbers. And I feel like they figured out relatively quickly how to pick up on that.
They figured out how to quickly pick up on that. That's right. And so, you know, that was at the beginning when the industry said, oh, well, we can modify around that. And so people started to spin their messages, right?
Yep. They started to add variation to it.
They started to add variation to every message and, you know, kind of beat the system. Well, what the carriers then started to do was block. So if you texted a landline, that was an undeliverable text. And so they looked at two things. They looked at your undeliverable rate, and they looked at your opt-out rate. So if your non-delivery rate was, I forget what the exact number thresholds were, but if your non-delivery rate was like greater than 0.1, and your opt-out rate was greater than 0.1, and that's close. I don't remember the exact numbers.
Yep.
They would look at the phone number sending, and they would block that phone number. So the carriers started blocking individual phone numbers.
Right. With no warning.
With no warning.
No heads up.
Nope.
You just, imagine you're in the middle of sending text messages out, and then all of a sudden you think to yourself, what's going on? I was getting response earlier this morning.
And now I'm not.
And now I'm not. Right.
Right.
Jeez. The number's toast.
Right. And so
in an instant.
Exactly. And that was one of the things that, we got a $30,000 bill now or a $30,000 investment that we have to make to build phone number quality markers inside of our application.
Yep. Like health stats, basically.
Red, yellow, green.
Yep.
So we had to start to display to our users the velocity of their opt-out rates and undeliverable rates, so they could see, are they trending towards a bad place or are they trending towards a good place?
Wow.
And then we had to go green, yellow, and red. If they were green, they were good.
Yep.
If they were yellow, they're trending towards the bad route. And hey, you better pay attention to this number. Whatever you're doing isn't working, and this number is about not to work. And red was, carriers are blocking this message. They're not even delivering it.
Right.
And we had to communicate that from the carrier side back to our users. What people don't understand is that every carrier communicates a little bit differently. And so for us, they just think, why don't you just, like, you see the comments. I get tagged all the time on social media, right?
Yes,
and
your responses are great too, by the way.
You see the comments, you see the support tickets. Support's even worse, than social media. But people are like, well, why can't you just give me this? Well, we're working on it, right? And this was, a year and a half ago. We said, okay, we have to give our users these numbers, these trends, and these markers. But when you get under the covers and say, okay, how do we get that data? How do we get the information to communicate to our user? A user will just say, well, it's this number divided by this number. Yeah, right, kinda. And then you get into all the technical nuance of what actually lives under the cover. And so the investments that we make in providing a platform that delivers messaging out to our customers' prospects. It's been a big deal. And I know more about texting technology and protocol now than I ever cared to.
I'm sure than you ever cared to.
Ever cared to.
Yeah.
And you and I know an equal amount about this, and neither one of us wish we did.
Right. It's been I want to choose my words wisely here. Initially, I feel like it's been a large pain in the neck. As it's evolved, I think we've realized this. We don't have a choice in this matter. First of
Right.
all, let's understand that, because so many people have
Right.
said, well, hey, FreedomSoft, why can't you just let this or approve this or do that?
Yep.
We're not the ones carrying the bat here.
That's right.
The carriers are.
That's right.
And when the carriers decide this is the date that this goes live and this is the change that happens, there is no direct communication. We talk to our phone provider. We do not have access directly to the carriers, right? Through the provider.
Not really. We go directly to the carriers on some information, and we go through the technology platforms on others.
But
that
we have channels.
yeah,
And they're not.
100%.
Nobody's saying, hey, FreedomSoft, what's your input on this? They're just coming down with, this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah, and here's the problem. Every carrier tells us something different.
Right. They're not unified.
That's the problem.
Right.
So we don't have connection to the CEO of T-Mobile,
Correct.
who's not making the decision anyway, right? We don't have connection to the executive vice president of text message compliance delivery, right?
Right.
At T-Mobile, at
Right.
Verizon, at you name it, fill in the blank.
And here's why that matters.
We have direct connection to the low-level person who's sitting on the front lines doing something that they're told to do.
Right. Not policymaker.
Not policy, so they never know what's about to come to them.
Right.
They're given a memo Monday morning and say, enforce it like this today.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's crazy.
Can I say, this speaks to we say this all the time on this show, proximity to successful, like-minded people. And this is one of those things that absolutely lights a fire on that concept of you better be around people that know what's going on, or you're going to find yourself in a spot where, all that money that you did spend in your business is now, gone, and you have to make an adjustment. You don't know what that adjustment is. And just listening to this conversation is, it is so impactful to say, oh man, my motivation better be to get around people that know what's going on and know how to adjust to this dynamic industry. And yeah, it's fascinating stuff, because I've seen it happen. As this has been going along for the last 2 years, I've seen you guys in the office adjust to it. And as I was, investing as well during that time, I was adjusting to little things along the way as well, because I was hearing it here in the office. So fascinating stuff, and it just really speaks to the point of getting involved with people that know what's going on. Well,
so if we take that back. And you're exactly right, Joe. So if we take us back to a year ago, roughly, and in this last year, we talked about A to P, so application to person, but then there's also the 10 DLC. So that's the 10-digit long code. That's your local phone number. That's your area
texting
code.
From a 10-digit number.
Texting from a 10-digit number is from an application to a person, and then from a 10-digit number. Yep. That's what was controlled and regulated. So in the last year, the carriers, in response to the government hammer that was going to come, created what they call a couple of things. They created what we call a campaign registry, which is it's the registry of all approved text message senders by use case in America.
Right. Nationwide.
So this campaign registry. So in order to enforce this campaign registry, or to create this campaign registry, this database of all texters, you had to create a business. You had to register your business and then create a business profile. And you had, so registering your business required you to have a company, have an
Right.
EIN.
First have a business. Yep.
First have a business.
That's right.
You know, set up an entity.
Yep.
Number 2, have it registered with the IRS and EIN.
Yep.
And then fill out all your paperwork correctly and submit it. That submission of your business registration went in. Now,
Yep.
people often think that we at FreedomSoft have anything to do with this. We have nothing to do with it. What we do is we recognize that our users can't send text messages unless they register their business. So we've had to build all of the flow and the connection on the back end to the campaign registry through the
Right.
carrier routings
Yep.
in order to take a submission from a user, register their business, have the carriers tell us that it's approved, display that to the user, and then step them forward and create their business profile. Because the business profile then starts to build around the use case.
Right.
And then from there, we've got, Mike, you can talk even more intelligently about it than me, but we've got the business registration, we've got the business profile, and that creates a unit of registration, I guess, through the campaign registry that now you can go into a platform like FreedomSoft, add phone numbers, and you're approved to send messages.
Right. And we haven't said this yet. You can still text from an application to a person.
100%.
Right. So we'll talk more about that. But yes, first off, they want to know that you're a legit business, and you can't just say I am. You have to prove it.
Right.
So multiple people have come to this process and say, wait a minute, I don't have an EIN number. Well, that's your step one.
An EIN is an employee identification
Correct.
number.
You have to go register your business entity
with the IRS.
Correct. Yep. So step one. So that's been news to some, like, what? Yes. That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Step one. Then you have to prove that you're legit. And here, this is what's blown me away about this. Let me speak to a couple points. Number one. So you submit your information into FreedomSoft, but we just pass it on to the
Right.
carriers for review. And so I get why people say, hey, FreedomSoft, why can't you just approve me? And
Yep.
we're really clear about saying, wish we could, this isn't our game.
Right.
You're just running the info through FreedomSoft. So this isn't a FreedomSoft thing. This is every phone platform thing.
Yep.
We just happen to build the technology into our software for our user base,
Yep.
which has worked great.
Yep.
The other thing that blows me away is, so first off, if you're a business, if you're an application and you want to text a consumer, you now have to register. So they know exactly where text messages should be coming from and are allowed to come from.
Yep.
The second thing that blew my mind was once you're registered, which you now have to be, and this is every, capital EVERY, every text that gets sent from application to person, so call it from a business to a consumer now, every text is not only tracked and recorded, but it has a unique identifier number. This blew my mind the
Yep.
first time I saw this. I remember going back in and saying, holy crap.
Yep.
They are I think policing is probably the right word. If somebody texts your business and says, hey, can you call me this afternoon at 3? And you respond yes, that text message is forever in a database with a unique identifier number that can be looked up, researched, identified. It's logged.
Yep.
Every single text, this blew my mind.
Wow.
When I saw the level that this came out. And then I was like, what in the world? And then I thought, how many hundreds of millions of texts are going out today over these platforms?
Oh, yeah.
And billions of texts every
day.
single day. And they're all logged. And so if you want to go back to and ask a question, hey, why didn't this text get delivered? The carrier support team will say, what's the number for it? And you can go tell them it's this number and then go back and research it and look it up.
Right.
That's the level of where we went from, call it 6-7 years ago, was kind of wide open.
Wild West.
To where we sit today.
Yeah.
That's the level that this is being tracked. Here's why people need to hear this and investors need to hear this. You can't just say, oh, well, I'm going to go on this platform and I know I'm not using it exactly right. So if that gets shut down, I'll just go fire it up over here. No, you won't.
Right.
Your business is registered. Every text that your entity sends is tracked, recorded, can be researched.
Yep.
They can go look it up a year later.
Yep.
And say, hey, we see this history of here's what you've been doing.
And let me take that to another level.
It blew my mind.
Let me take that to another level.
Yeah.
So now somebody registers their business. They get onto a platform. They say to themselves, I know kind of where we're at, but I'm willing to take the business risk. I'm still gonna blast out text messages. Number one, you're gonna get throttled and shut down almost immediately by almost every platform.
Right. Enjoy your 24 to 48 hours.
Right. It's going to get shut down
Correct.
very, very quickly.
Right.
But let's say that somebody says, okay, I'm going to just not worry about if I get shut down because I'll just go start another entity, get another EIN. It takes 24 hours.
Right.
And I'll just go do another one. And I'll just register that one and I'll be off to the races. Here's the problem. You are behind the scenes the owner in the public domain of entity number 1 that got shut down. You go to entity number 2 and try to create it. You are the owner of entity number 2. It won't even get approved.
Right.
That's what people don't understand.
No.
You can't just say, hey, I'm having a challenge here with XYZ technology company, getting my approval, getting my deliverability, whatever it is, and just say, well, I quit them. Let me go somewhere else. You go somewhere else, and number one, you've reset the timeline, so you're back to ground zero.
Yep.
And number two, you have no more chance somewhere else than where you were.
They're tracking it.
They're tracking it.
All of it.
Now, that all being said, let's talk about this next date. So we had the December 2019 Trace Act. We had the several iterations along the way, several milestones.
Yep.
Where the carrier said, we're going to do this.
Yeah. Now you have to do this.
Now you have to do
now
this.
We're going to add this piece.
And here's the thing. They always told us 2 weeks before they were rolling it out, and it was a hard hammer.
Right. By the way, this is coming.
We never knew it.
Right.
In advance. So, I just want people to understand, not us, but any technology platform you've been using, we didn't know, until like Monday, and then not this Friday, but the Friday after, hard hammer is dropping, and you've got to build all of this technology in 10 days.
Right. And multiple of these changes were, it either looks like this starting on that date, or don't bother sending a message.
Right. It's not going to go through.
Right. And they have that ability.
Right. So there were several milestones from 2019 December to September 1st, 2023. The carriers finally kind of got in unison and created a somewhat in sync process for approvals. Now, the problem is on the back end, there's been zero consistency in the human manual. I'm looking at the submission approval, but on the front end, we were finally told what to do.
Right.
So prior to September 1, we were told what had to happen. So we built technology to bring us up to September 1, 2023, technology deliverability approval process.
That was the most recent line in the sand.
The most recent line in the sand.
And it was, this line in the sand was either your business is fully approved.
Yep.
Or 100% of the messages that you send are not going anywhere.
100%.
Right.
Zero. And so we knew this line in the sand, and so we made another large investment in technology and team and people and coding and hours to build this thing. September 1 hits, and the industry text message, like every industry, is up in arms. Like I've watched other industries and
this is not just a real estate thing.
No, and leading software companies in other industries, how they've had to respond to users, because users don't understand what just happened. They know that this date something changed with text messaging, but they don't understand why or how. And so here at FreedomSoft, we said, okay, this is a big deal. We have to get this right. So September 1 comes. We had built up to that point. We had deployed our code. And bam, the hammer dropped. Now I can say this, 45 days, 50 days since September 1, the day that we're recording this, we have a 99% approval rate?
Yeah, higher than that. Last I heard, we had fewer than 10 accounts that were still pending.
Of thousands accounts, we have fewer than 10 that are still not approved. And what we found is that those 10 probably have a mismatched business name. Like on their EIN, they have a comma, and what they submitted to the carriers missed the comma.
Yeah,
like literally that.
So let's bring this point.
Yeah.
If there's not a comma in the submission and there's a comma on the EIN document, or when they look it up on a Secretary of State website, or they go into their database, they say there's a mismatch.
Yeah.
So we've tried to communicate this with our user base, and we like the word exactly in all caps. The submitted information has to be an exact match. And this comes back and we're like, this is ridiculous. Well, we didn't make the rule.
Right.
And so they said, hey, because there's an actual human being actually doing a review on every submission. It's not, this part of it is not automated from my understanding.
Right.
And so, Rob, to your point is FreedomSoft built tech around these submissions to help our users. And the large majority started to get approved here over the last, since September 1. And then some would come back and we would ask the question, hey, this information, it's just, right, it's the same info with a different business. Why did it come back? Because a different human got a hold of it.
Right.
It's that level of frustration.
Yeah. Believe me, it was incredibly frustrating for us because it made zero sense, right? September 1 hits and the majority of our user accounts get approved. But then there's this big group that had operated under submissions. So remember, this is why I'm talking about these milestones. There were milestones along the way, and if your submission for your business registration and your business profile happened during this certain milestone requirement, all of a sudden your business registration and profile did not meet the new September 1 requirements.
Right.
And so they instantly went in and disapproved a previously approved submission.
Right.
And so then we had to work with our users, with the platforms, and with the carriers and say, you've got to help us push all of these through. They were approved here, and the carriers came back and said, we don't care. Now here's the new game. So we had to build the new game for that cohort of people who had been previously approved but had done it so under a certain milestone step along the way.
Right.
Many users were fine. Some were not. Today, fast forward, we have less than 10 users that still can't do something. And I would argue that probably a few of those are spammers that shouldn't do something, because we do get those on our platform. I would argue that a few of them are just bad, mismatched business names, mismatched EIN, transposed number, something weird, right? That just has to go. But here's what FreedomSoft did. We built the submission process to automate as much of this for our users as possible. And so you don't have to become an expert in what does this mean. Our process, when you use FreedomSoft, you go into the phone settings area, go to the phone setup, and we walk you through the most up-to-date business registration, business profile, and campaign registry process that you can get that has a 99.9% successful approval rating, and we have a good relationship with the platforms and the carriers. So our approval process is not egregiously long. It's pretty quick. We can't really push it. We can't say that
we don't control it.
We don't control it. Yeah. But what we have seen is that we have such a streamlined process that we built on the back end that the success and the speed of approval is very, very high.
Yeah. And let me say this, from the way we handled it, hindsight, we had a lot of frustrated days, conversations, meetings, like, here we go yet again. But the way that we chose to go about this was, on occasion, we didn't always get, enough heads up to make the change, but we could see the writing on the wall. We were having some, Zoom meetings with our phone provider, and they gave us a little bit of foreshadowing, forecasting, here's what's coming. And so I remember that some of our users got a little bit frustrated from time to time saying, hey, FreedomSoft, why can't I do this here, but I can, but I can do this over here? And our answer was, because this is where the industry's going. And where this sort of all culminated is, Rob, you were at a mastermind a couple weeks ago talking to other platforms saying we're not getting anything approved. And I think the choice that we ended up making that was smart is we were on the front line and on the leading edge of here's what's coming, and we're gonna build these changes and updates into the software early on and on pace with what the carriers were rolling out.
Yep.
And looking back, like I said, it created a little bit of frustration. Why aren't you letting me do this when some other places are? Well, FreedomSoft is still here. Our approval rate now is just shy of 100%, like just shy of 100%. And there are still things that'll happen, or businesses or whatever. Change happens, but we can stand on the fact that says, hey, carrier, we played ball for the last 3 years. We've had the ability to kind of call in a favor, right? We did this, we did this recently. We had a group of accounts, and we're still huddling, but it's probably below 10 today, but we said, hey, can you please take a look at this particular group? And they came back approved within 25 minutes.
Yep.
So it's not to say that, we control the process right now. We don't. But because we chose to stay on top of this and play ball and understand that, yes, there's a change coming.
Yep.
We now sit in a lot better position than a lot of the other platforms, because we said, hey, we played by the rules. Not only that, but we built some additional tech in based on where we knew the industry was going that helped our users' numbers to stay healthy, and the opt-ins that are required now, and
that's right,
all that stuff. So anyway,
and that's why
put us in a good spot now.
Yeah, and that's why a couple minutes ago, the reason we were able to do that, take 70-some accounts and push them through and get them approved in 25 minutes, is because of those connections we have direct. So, a few minutes ago, I gave you a look when you said we don't have direct connections with carriers. I'm like, that's what we've worked to build and figure out, how do we get direct to those people so that we can push something through and it can go up the chain quickly and land into the fingers of the right approval people, right? And this proves the work we've done on the relationship side to get things pushed to a very high level. Even if it's not the CEO of T-Mobile, we're pushing it to the decision makers. And I can tell you of 2 software company owners that I know that in the last 50 days, when we said we're going to lean in, because here's the decision we had to make. We could have said, you know what, forget about this. We're just going to shut the phone system inside of FreedomSoft off. We're going to create an API or an integration with outside phone systems and let some phone system deal with it, and people can plug into us as a CRM, data provider, automation tool, list builder, marketing, direct mail, all of that stuff, right? But and we sat down and we said, does that serve our users the best? And the decision we made was no. Is it expensive for us? Yes. Is it frustrating for us? Yes. Is it a lot of work for us? Yes. Does my brain sometimes hurt at 2 o'clock in the afternoon trying to think through the right way to tackle something? Yes. But it's all worth it.
Yeah.
Because our users' experience matters. And so when we were talking about the regulation process, and I had mentioned how the TCPA and the Trace Act had put express written consent, where texting has landed today, those 2 arguments of non-marketing and non-ATDS almost don't matter anymore, because the rule and the regulation has gotten to the place of opt-in only. So a consumer must opt in intentionally, with express consent, they have to opt in order for you to text them back. And so it's very, very tightly controlled on what opting in means. And that's the technology that we built in FreedomSoft to help our users not only be in compliant, but make that as simple and easy as possible for a consumer to opt into our users' phone application, so that you as a user can have text conversations and reply conversations and follow-up conversations and all of the stuff that is inherently important in any business, right? You generate a lead, and you have to follow up, and you have to communicate, and you have to talk to this person, and text is a way that people talk in this century.
For sure.
I think this is it's a great segue into sort of what we talked about earlier, and that is the solutions, right?
Yep.
And I think there's two different types of people that are listening to this. This is impactful for. It's the investor that you mentioned earlier, and you gave the Faster Mogul link to. Hey, this all sounds, I don't understand this. I'm
Yep.
interested in real estate, and I want to be around people that know what's going on.
Yep.
And they're sort of just in the blue coming into it without any concepts.
Yep.
And then you have the guy who's been running his business, guy or gal, that's been running their business and been successful using this thing. Now what do they do?
Yep.
Right? Now they're running into a challenge. What is the way that they can tackle this? And what's the bright side? Where's the sun creeping out from behind the cloud here in this? And so I think it'd be important to sort of talk about that as we're wrapping up the show. Just what do people do, and what are the other places that people can get involved and connected to learn what to do?
Yeah, I mean, here's what I would tell people to do as we wrap this up. What I would tell you to do, if you want to see the FreedomSoft system in some level of demonstration, go to freedomsoft.com, get deals now. freedomsoft.com, get deals now. And I host a live training where we show you our various tools and features and exactly how to get the results you want by using them. Right? We don't build features and tools inside of FreedomSoft that are just for show. They're for results. And everything we build is intended to get you a result. And what you'll see by going through this is you'll see our direct mail system, and I cover that on most of the sessions. But you'll see the direct mail system, our Mail Now system, and the FreedomSoft Mail Now system has taken what real estate investors have experienced from text messaging and tried to apply it to something that I don't foresee going away. It's been around for 20 plus years, and direct mail is going to continue. And what we've done is we've integrated an AI component into our direct mail, into our list building, lead management, and our direct mail. We've integrated an AI component. And if you're interested in how that works and what that looks like, jump over there and check that out. freedomsoft.com/get deals now.
Yeah,
and
incredible.
I think you guys will love it.
Yeah. Speak a little bit too, Rob. We got a live event, Mogul Live, coming up. I mean, and that is just an incredible way to get in the hallway, get in the room with people that are knowledgeable.
Yeah, we do. We've got a live event coming up just around the corner. It's a 3-day live event right here in Denver, Colorado. We're going to be breaking down industry market updates, industry updates, technology updates, things that you can be doing, thinking about, and applying in your business right now to win in the current state of affairs. And it's a 3-day event, and we've got fantastic sessions. And one of the things that I'll tell people this event is going to cover, because I recognize this is one of the greatest fuels that I ever poured on the fire of my business, and that is private money. we are going to, at this event, walk you step by step through my blueprint for getting private money. And my promise to you is this: if you will follow the blueprint, you can walk out of the event and over the next 90 days, execute on this blueprint and get, in as little as 90 days, $1 million in private money. Private money is the fuel that will explode your business, because you're no longer reliant on a bank. You're no longer reliant on a wholesale buyer. You're no longer reliant on a seller that's going to do creative financing. When you have the ability to bring private money to the table, you have the ability to engineer your own outcomes and your own success, and business and life gets a whole lot easier. So not only are we going to show you that blueprint at our live event coming up November 10th, 11th, and 12th right here in Denver, Colorado, but we're going to show you then all of the various tactics and strategies and things you can do to take that fuel and create the opportunities to actually turn that into a result. So whether you want to generate cash, whether you want to generate cash flow, whether you want to scale your business to the next level, this event is going to be the event for you to be at this year. So, Joe, you can tell us what the link is. I don't know what it is. If people want to go get registered and show up for us, hit me with the link.
Yeah, let me, I thought it was on that sheet that you had there.
It is not.
Okay. Well, let's take a look. And it'll be in the description, guys, too. Like, all of our links, all the ways that you can connect with us are right in the description of the show. So I'll make sure that that's in the description. So just make sure you look down there in the description of the show, get registered for the event. And again, it's November 10th, 11th, and 12th right here in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll look it up. I bet I can figure it out here. We should...
It's /live, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's Real Estate Mogul. I'm going to look it up because you know why?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
realestatemogul.com / hold on, I got to type correctly.
Okay, yeah, it is realestatemogul.com / live.
Yep, realestatemogul.com / live.
Perfect.
We should be prepared.
That's my bad. I'll take that one.
Yeah, I don't know who we could blame.
Blame Edgar.
We could blame Edgar. That's where I was going to go. Yeah, I was just looking at him, sitting there next to you.
He's sleeping on the job for sure.
Hey, all right, guys. Well, hey, I hope you guys got a lot of value out of this. I wanted to just bring you up to date on sort of the transition in the texting mindset in the real estate industry, and I want you to walk away knowing this. If you're, no matter where you are and no matter what you're doing, if you want to come and check out FreedomSoft and say, hey, these guys got my back. From a technology standpoint, these guys are on the cutting edge of knowing, number one, what a real estate investor needs to succeed, and we understand how to build the technology to make that happen and make it available, usable, and results getting for you. Come and check us out. We'd love to have you part of the FreedomSoft family. All right, guys, that's a wrap for this one. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers.